The Rolex wasn't mine. I stared at my laptop screen, watching my wife Jennifer fumble with her phone during our video call. She'd stepped away from the camera for just a second to grab her coffee, and there it was. A men's gold Rolex, sitting pretty on our nightstand. The same nightstand where I keep my cheap Casio when I'm home. Nothing says marital bliss like finding evidence of your wife's affair through a pixelated video call from a Denver hotel room, I muttered to myself, taking another sip of overpriced room service coffee. Jennifer returned to the screen, her silk robe, the anniversary gift I'd bought her last year, loosely tied and revealing more than it should for a Tuesday morning call with her supposedly loving husband. Sorry, honey, you were saying something about the Morrison project? She tucked a strand of blonde hair behind her ear, the same gesture that had charmed me 15 years ago. Now it just looked calculated. Yeah, just that it's wrapping up ahead of schedule. I should be home by Thursday instead of Friday. I kept my voice steady, watching her face carefully. Was that a flicker of disappointment? Oh, that's great. I'll make sure to pick up groceries. She glanced away from the camera. Listen, Nick, I've got this huge presentation for the Blackstone account today. Can we talk tonight? Sure thing, break a leg with Blackstone. I paused, letting the silence stretch. By the way, love what you've done with the bedroom. Very masculine touches. She laughed, but it sounded forced. What do you mean? Nothing. Just looks different on camera. Must be the lighting. After we hung up, I sat in that sterile hotel room, staring at the gray Denver skyline. 15 years of marriage, and it comes down to spotting another man's watch during a glitchy video call. If Raymond Chandler had lived to see Skype, he'd have written this scene better. I opened my laptop and booked an earlier flight home. Then I did something that would either save my marriage or end it spectacularly. I called Jennifer's parents. Mrs. Bishop, it's Nick. I was wondering if you and Harold would like to surprise Jennifer with a visit tomorrow. I'm coming home early and thought it would be nice. The enthusiasm in her voice was painful. Margaret Bishop lived for opportunities to check on her daughter's perfect life, to make sure Jennifer had married well and maintained the family's social standing. If only she knew what her precious daughter was really maintaining. The flight home Wednesday evening gave me plenty of time to think. I'd always been the practical one in our relationship, the IT project manager who handled the boring stuff while Jennifer climbed the social ladder with her PR firm. I fixed computers, she fixed reputations. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd met Jennifer at a company mixer 12 years ago. She was ambitious, beautiful, and had this way of making you feel like the most interesting person in the room. I was 31, tired of the dating scene and ready to settle down. She was 28 and looking for stability. It seemed perfect. The first few years were good. Great, even. We bought the condo in Riverside Heights, took vacations to Europe, hosted dinner parties where Jennifer's charm and my dry humor made us the couple everyone wanted to be around. But somewhere along the way, I became the supporting character in Jennifer's story. I pulled into our building's garage around 10 p.m., my heart hammering against my ribs. The rational part of my brain, the part that troubleshoots server crashes and manages project timelines, kept insisting there might be an innocent explanation for the Rolex. Maybe Jennifer was planning a surprise gift. Maybe it belonged to her brother, though he lived in Seattle and hadn't visited in months. But my gut knew better. 15 years of marriage teaches you to read the signs, even when you don't want to. I took the elevator to the 14th floor, my key ready. Our condo was at the end of the hall, corner unit with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. Jennifer had insisted on it, said it projected success. Now I wondered who else was enjoying the view. The lights were on. I could hear voices. Jennifer's laugh and a deeper voice I didn't recognize. My hand hesitated on the doorknob. Once I opened this door, there would be no going back to ignorant bliss. I turned the key and walked into my own personal nightmare. Jennifer was curled up on our white leather sofa, wearing nothing but a thin tank top and pajama shorts. Across from her, in my favorite armchair, sat a man I'd never seen before. He was maybe 45, silver at the temples, wearing an expensive-looking button-down shirt that was unbuttoned one button too many. His pants were draped over the chair arm, and he was in his boxers and socks. They both froze when they saw me. Jennifer's wine glass slipped from her hand, red wine spreading across the white leather like a scarlet stain. "Nick!" She jumped up, her face cycling through surprise, guilt, and panic in rapid succession. You're early. I thought you said Thursday. The man, who I now assumed was the owner of the Rolex, scrambled for his pants. Jesus, Jen, you said he was out of town until Friday. I was. I set my suitcase down carefully, my voice eerily calm. Plans changed? And you are? This is Sean Brooks from the agency, Jennifer said quickly. We were just going over the Blackstone presentation. You remember the one I mentioned? I looked at Sean, who was struggling to get his legs into his pants while sitting down. Interesting presentation style. Very hands-on. Look, this isn't what it looks like, Sean said, finally standing up to zip his pants. He was taller than me, broader in the shoulders, with the kind of confident bearing that screamed money and privilege. Really? Because it looks like my wife is entertaining another man in our living room while he's in his underwear. But hey, I'm just an IT guy. What do I know about creative presentations? Jennifer stepped between us, her hands raised like she was calming a wild animal. Nick, please, let me explain. Oh, I'm dying to hear this explanation, but first, let me make a quick call. I pulled out my phone and dialed Margaret Bishop's number. She answered on the second ring. Nick, is everything all right? You sound strange. Everything's perfect, Margaret. Actually, could you and Harold come over right now? I know it's late, but Jennifer has a surprise guest she'd love you to meet. I could practically hear Jennifer's pulse skyrocketing. Nick, no, don't. We'll be right there. Margaret's voice was bright with curiosity. Harold, get your coat. Jennifer has company. I hung up and smiled at Jennifer and Sean. They'll be here in 20 minutes. Sean, was it? You might want to find a shirt. Margaret's very traditional about these things. Sean Brooks, I learned over the next 20 minutes of the most awkward conversation in human history, was indeed Jennifer's business partner at Morrison & Associates PR. He was also married, the father of 2 teenage daughters, and apparently had been working late with my wife for the better part of 6 months. This is insane, Sean kept muttering, checking his Rolex. The same one I'd spotted on my nightstand. I should leave. Oh, please don't leave on my account, I said, settling into the kitchen bar stool with a beer. Besides, Margaret's been looking forward to meeting Jennifer's colleagues. She's very involved in her daughter's career. Jennifer paced between the living room and kitchen, having thrown on a sweater and jeans. Her face was pale, and she kept shooting me looks that ranged from pleading to furious. Nick, this is cruel, even for you. Cruel, I prefer educational. Your parents are about to learn what their daughter's been up to while her husband travels for work. Think of it as a learning opportunity. The doorbell rang at exactly 10:47 p.m. I know because I was watching the clock, savoring every second of Jennifer's panic. I'll get it, I announced cheerfully. Margaret and Harold Bishop stood in the hallway, Margaret clutching her purse and practically vibrating with excitement. Harold looked tired but indulgent. He'd learned long ago that resistance was futile when his wife decided something needed investigating. Oh, Nick, you look wonderful. Travel agrees with you. Margaret kissed my cheek, then peered around me into the condo. Where's our Jennifer? Right this way. She's in the living room with her colleague. I led them into the living room, where Jennifer stood frozen next to the sofa, and Sean hovered by the windows like he was considering jumping. Mom, Dad, Jennifer's voice cracked slightly. This is Sean Brooks from the agency. Margaret's smile faltered as she took in the scene. The wine stain on the sofa, Sean's rumpled appearance, the intimate lighting, and Jennifer's obvious distress. How lovely to meet you, Sean. Margaret's voice had gone arctic. She'd perfected that tone during 30 years of charity board meetings and PTA confrontations. Working quite late, aren't we? Sean cleared his throat. Yes, well, the Blackstone account has been very demanding. I'm sure it has. Harold spoke for the first time, his eyes moving from Sean to Jennifer to the wine glasses on the coffee table. Harold Bishop might have been quiet, but he wasn't stupid. The silence stretched until Margaret couldn't stand it anymore. Jennifer, dear, could I speak with you in the kitchen, privately? As soon as they were out of earshot, I heard Margaret's voice, low and sharp. Jennifer Marie Bishop Harris. What in God's name is going on here? Sean and Harold stood in the living room, 2 men caught in the blast radius of a domestic explosion. Harold studied Sean with the calculating gaze of a man who'd spent 40 years in insurance, assessing risks and liabilities. So, Sean, Harold said conversationally, married long? Sean's face went gray. 18 years. Kids? 2 daughters. Harold nodded slowly. I see. And does your wife know you're here? Before Sean could answer, we heard Margaret's voice rising in the kitchen. In your pajamas? With a married man? While your husband was out of town? Jennifer's response was too quiet to make out, but Margaret's wasn't. Don't you dare try to justify this to me, young lady. Sean bolted for the door. I have to go. I can't. Sean Brooks, I called out, stopping him with his hand on the doorknob. You forgot something. I walked over to the coffee table and picked up his watch, the Rolex he'd apparently left on my nightstand that morning and retrieved before I got home. Wouldn't want you to leave this behind again. It's a beautiful piece. Your wife must have excellent taste. He snatched the watch from my hand, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. This isn't over, Harris. Oh, I think it is. But hey, thanks for taking such good care of my wife while I was working to pay for this place. Really above and beyond. Sean slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. In the kitchen, Margaret was in full interrogation mode, her voice carrying clearly now that she'd abandoned any pretense of discretion. How long has this been going on? Mom, please. How long, Jennifer? Few months. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. I didn't raise you to be a cheater, I supplied helpfully from the living room. Harold winced. Nick, maybe we should... No, Harold. Margaret appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face flushed with rage and humiliation. Nick has every right to be angry. Jennifer, I am ashamed of you. Jennifer followed her mother, tears streaming down her face. Mom, you don't understand. Nick and I have been having problems. We've grown apart. I was lonely. So you decided to entertain married men in your living room while your husband worked to support you? Margaret's voice could have cut glass. Is this what I raised you to be? Margaret, Harold said quietly, perhaps we should discuss this at home. No, I want to hear this. I want to understand how my daughter became the kind of woman who destroys marriages. Jennifer turned to me, desperation in her eyes. Nick, tell them. Tell them how you're never here, how you work all the time, how we never talk anymore. I took a long pull from my beer, considering. You're right, Jen. I do work a lot. 60 hours a week, sometimes more. You know why? Because you wanted this condo. You wanted the BMW. You wanted vacations in Europe and dinners at restaurants where the appetizers cost more than most people spend on groceries. That's not fair. You wanted the lifestyle, Jennifer. I provided it. What I didn't know was that you wanted me to provide it while you entertained other men in our bed. Margaret made a sound like she'd been slapped. In your bed? Well, I assume that's where the Rolex came from. Unless Sean's in the habit of leaving expensive jewelry on random nightstands. Jennifer's face crumpled. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? I asked. Were you going to divorce me first? Or just keep Sean as a side project indefinitely? Harold cleared his throat. Nick, we should go. Let you two work this out. Actually, Harold, I'd appreciate it if you stayed as witnesses. Witnesses to what? Margaret asked. To this. I walked to the hall closet and pulled out 2 suitcases. Jennifer, I want you out tonight. You can't kick me out of my own home. Actually, I can. The lease is in my name. The mortgage is in my name. Everything here is in my name because you said it would be easier for taxes. Remember that conversation? Jennifer's face went white. Nick, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. Counseling? For what? To help me understand why my wife decided to audition for a soap opera while I was in Denver? Margaret sat down heavily on the sofa, her purse clutched in her lap. Jennifer, pack your things. You're coming home with us. I'm 36 years old. I'm not moving back in with my parents. Then you should have thought of that before you decided to throw away your marriage, Harold said quietly. It was the harshest thing I'd ever heard him say to his daughter. Jennifer looked around the room, at her parents' disappointed faces, at me standing there with my arms crossed, at the wine stain on the white leather sofa that would probably never come out. Fine, she whispered. Fine, but this isn't over, Nick. Half of everything we built together is mine. We'll see about that, I said. Harold, Margaret, thank you for coming. I know this wasn't what you expected. Margaret stood up, her composure cracking for the first time. Nick, I'm so sorry. I'm so ashamed. This isn't your fault, Margaret. You raised Jennifer to be better than this. What she chose to do with that upbringing was her decision. As Jennifer packed her things, slamming drawers and muttering under her breath, I sat in the kitchen and called my lawyer's emergency line. Some conversations can't wait until morning. Dave, it's Nick Harris. Yeah, I know it's late. I need to file for divorce, tonight if possible. Through the bedroom door, I could hear Jennifer crying and her mother's voice, alternating between comfort and condemnation. Harold sat across from me at the kitchen island, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the past hour. I'm sorry, Nick, he said quietly. I thought we raised her better. You did, Harold. Sometimes people just choose to be disappointing. Jennifer emerged from the bedroom with 2 suitcases and a face full of rage and tears. I hope you're happy, Nick. I hope destroying our marriage was worth your petty revenge. I didn't destroy our marriage, Jennifer. I just turned on the lights. After they left, I sat alone in the condo that suddenly felt enormous. The wine stain on the sofa looked like a crime scene, and Sean's cologne still lingered in the air. I opened all the windows and started a load of laundry, washing the sheets where my wife had apparently been entertaining her business partner. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You humiliated me in front of my in-laws. You'll pay for that. I assumed it was from Sean. I saved the number and texted back, looking forward to it. Say hi to your wife for me. Then I opened a fresh beer and started planning my next move. Because if Sean Brooks thought a little public humiliation was bad, he was about to learn what real consequences looked like. The next morning, I called in sick to work and did something I'd never done in 15 years of marriage. I went through Jennifer's things, systematically, methodically, like the IT professional I am, looking for patterns and evidence. Her laptop was password protected, but Jennifer had always been lazy about security. Her password was our anniversary date, same as it had been for 5 years. Some people never learn. What I found in her email made my stomach turn. 6 months of correspondence with Sean Brooks, starting professional and gradually becoming personal, then close, then explicit. They had pet names for each other. They made plans around my travel schedule. They discussed hotels, restaurants, and weekend getaways they'd taken while I thought Jennifer was visiting her college roommate in Chicago. But the worst part was reading Jennifer's complaints about me. According to her emails, I was boring, predictable, and emotionally unavailable. I worked too much, talked too little, and apparently had no ambition beyond my middle management IT job. He's like living with a robot, she'd written to Sean 3 weeks ago. Efficient, reliable, and completely passionless. Sometimes I wonder if he'd even notice if I disappeared. Well, Jennifer, I noticed. I printed everything. Every email, every photo they'd sent each other, every receipt from their romantic dinners and hotel stays. Then I drove to my lawyer's office with a box full of evidence that would make Jennifer's divorce attorney weep. Dave Morrison, no relation to Jennifer's PR firm, was a bulldog of a man who specialized in messy divorces. I'd known him since college, and he'd been waiting for this call for years. Jesus, Nick, he said, flipping through the printed emails. She documented everything. It's like she wanted to get caught. What are my options? In this state, with this evidence, you can take her for everything. The adultery is clearly documented, you've got witnesses, and since everything's in your name anyway, he shrugged, she'll get nothing. Maybe some personal belongings. What about her claim to half the assets? Dave laughed. What assets? The condo's in your name, financed with your income. The cars are in your name. The bank accounts are yours. She contributed what exactly? Her charming personality? I felt a grim satisfaction settling in my chest. File the papers. I want her served at work. Nick, that's brutal, even for you. She humiliated me in my own home, Dave. Turnabout's fair play. While Dave prepared the divorce papers, I drove to Morrison & Associates PR. The office was in a converted warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and industrial chic. Jennifer had always loved the aesthetic, said it made her feel creative and important. I didn't go inside. Instead, I parked across the street and waited. At 12:30, Jennifer and Sean emerged together, walking close but not touching. They were being careful now, probably thinking they'd dodged a bullet after last night's disaster. They went to Chez Laurent, an expensive French restaurant where Jennifer and I had celebrated our 10th anniversary. I followed at a distance and took a table where I could watch them without being seen. They sat at a corner booth, holding hands across the table. Jennifer was animated, gesturing with her wine glass, probably recounting last night's drama. Sean looked tense, checking his phone repeatedly. I took photos, lots of photos. Then I did something that felt deliciously petty. I had the waiter send them a bottle of champagne with a note. Congratulations on your new relationship, a well-wisher. I watched Jennifer's face go pale as she read the note. Her head snapped up, scanning the restaurant. I raised my water glass in a mock toast when her eyes found mine. Sean said something sharp to her, threw money on the table, and they left without finishing their meal. I stayed for dessert. The creme brulee was excellent. That afternoon, I paid a visit to Stephanie Brooks, Sean's wife. She lived in Westfield Heights, an upscale suburb where the houses had circular driveways and the lawns were maintained by professional services. Stephanie answered the door in yoga pants and a Northwestern University sweatshirt. She was attractive in a sporty, no-nonsense way. The kind of woman who ran marathons and served on charity boards. The opposite of Jennifer's high-maintenance glamour. Mrs. Brooks, I'm Nick Harris. I think we need to talk. Her face went very still. About what? About what your husband's been doing with my wife for the past 6 months. She stared at me for a long moment, then stepped aside. Come in. Her living room was decorated in neutral tones with family photos everywhere. Sean and Stephanie at various charity events, their daughters at school functions, family vacations to places like Aspen and Martha's Vineyard. It looked like the life Jennifer had always wanted. I've suspected for a while, Stephanie said, settling into an armchair across from me. The late nights, the business trips that didn't make sense, the way he started dressing differently. But I didn't want to believe it. I handed her a manila envelope. I'm sorry to be the one to confirm it. She opened the envelope and looked through the photos I'd taken at lunch, the printed emails, the hotel receipts. Her face remained perfectly composed, but I could see her hands trembling slightly. How long? She asked. 6 months, maybe longer. I only found out yesterday. The Morrison account, she said quietly. He's been working late on the Morrison account. I should have known. Sean's never worked past 6 in his life unless there was something in it for him. I'm filing for divorce. I thought you should know. Stephanie set the photos aside and looked at me directly. What do you want from me, Mr. Harris? Nothing. I just thought you deserved to know the truth, and you thought I might be useful in your divorce proceedings. I had to admire her directness. The thought crossed my mind. She smiled for the first time since I'd arrived, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. Sean thinks he's very clever. He's been moving money around, setting up accounts I don't know about. He's planning something. Like what? I don't know yet, but Sean doesn't do anything without an exit strategy. He's probably been preparing for this day since your wife caught his attention. We talked for another hour. Stephanie was smart, observant, and absolutely furious beneath her composed exterior. She'd been married to Sean for 18 years and knew exactly how his mind worked. He'll try to destroy you, she warned, as I prepared to leave. Sean doesn't like to lose, and he especially doesn't like to be embarrassed. What you did last night, exposing him in front of your in-laws, that was a declaration of war. Let him try, I said. I'm just getting started. That evening, I got a call from Jennifer. She was staying with her parents, and she sounded exhausted. Nick, we need to talk. Like adults. I'm listening. This doesn't have to get ugly. We can work out a fair settlement, split everything down the middle, and move on with our lives. Jennifer, you cheated on me for 6 months. You brought another man into our bed. You lied to me, to your parents, to everyone. Why exactly would I want to be fair to you? Because we loved each other once. Because 15 years should count for something. You're right, 15 years should count for something. That's why what you did is so unforgivable. Sean and I, it's real, Nick. It's not just some fling. We're in love. The casual cruelty of that statement took my breath away. Congratulations. I hope you'll be very happy together, after his divorce is finalized, of course. What do you mean? I mean, I paid Stephanie Brooks a visit today. Lovely woman. Very understanding about the whole situation. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Nick, what did you do? I told her the truth. She deserved to know what kind of man she married. Just like I deserve to know what kind of woman I married. You bastard. You vindictive bastard. Jennifer, you made your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. I hung up and poured myself a scotch. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights twinkled like stars. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. My phone buzzed with another text from Sean's number. You have no idea what you've started. I texted back, enlighten me, but he didn't respond. He was probably too busy explaining to his wife why there were photos of him holding hands with another woman at an expensive restaurant. I raised my glass to the window and toasted my reflection. Here's to new beginnings, Nick, and to making sure some people get exactly what they deserve. The process server found Jennifer at Morrison & Associates the next morning. I know because she called me at 9:47 a.m. screaming, "You serve me at work, at my job, in front of my colleagues? I figured you'd appreciate the efficiency. No need to track you down at your parents' house. Everyone saw, Nick. The entire office saw me get divorce papers. That's unfortunate. Maybe you should have thought about professional consequences before you started sleeping with your business partner." The line went quiet except for Jennifer's ragged breathing. When she spoke again, her voice was dangerously calm. "You're going to regret this." "I doubt it, but feel free to try." She hung up. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was my boss, Patricia Chen. "Nick, I need you in my office, now." Morrison Tech Solutions occupied 3 floors of a downtown office building. I'd worked there for 8 years, climbing from senior developer to project manager to my current role overseeing the entire IT infrastructure for mid-sized businesses. It was steady work, well-paid, and exactly the kind of boring job Jennifer had complained about in her emails. Patricia was waiting for me with a cup of coffee and a concerned expression. She was in her 50s, practical and direct, the kind of manager who cut through corporate nonsense and focused on results. "I got an interesting call this morning," she said without preamble, "from Jennifer Harris, your wife, ex-wife, or soon-to-be. She's claiming you've been using company resources for personal business, specifically that you've been hacking into private email accounts and stalking people." I sat down heavily in the chair across from her desk. "Patricia, you know me. Do those sound like things I do?" "No, but I have to ask. Are you going through a divorce?" "Yes, Jennifer's been having an affair. I found out 2 days ago." Patricia nodded slowly. "I'm sorry to hear that. But Nick, if there's any truth to what she's saying, there isn't. I accessed Jennifer's laptop using a password she gave me years ago. Everything else I've done has been completely legal. I can show you my browser history, my phone records, whatever you need." "That won't be necessary. But I want you to take the rest of the week off, paid leave. Let this situation settle down before it affects your work." I wanted to argue, but Patricia was protecting me and the company. "I understand. And Nick, whatever you're planning to do to get back at your wife, maybe consider whether it's worth your career." I drove home feeling like the walls were closing in. Jennifer was trying to destroy my livelihood, probably at Sean's suggestion. It was a smart move. Without my job, I couldn't afford the condo or the lawyer fees. I'd be forced to settle quickly and quietly. But Jennifer had made one crucial mistake. She'd declared war on someone who understood systems and networks better than she understood people. I spent the afternoon making phone calls. To my lawyer, to my bank, to my insurance company. I transferred money, changed passwords, and documented everything. If Jennifer wanted to play dirty, I'd show her what dirty really looked like. At 6 p.m., I drove to O'Malley's, a dive bar near the warehouse district where Jennifer would never think to look for me. I needed to think, and I needed to drink, and I needed to do both somewhere that didn't smell like Sean's cologne. I was halfway through my second beer when Dave Morrison slid into the booth across from me. "Rough day?" he asked. Jennifer tried to get me fired, told my boss I was using company resources to stalk her. Did it work? Not yet, but she's just getting started. Dave ordered a whiskey and studied my face. "Nick, I've known you since college. You're not the vindictive type, but this thing with Jennifer, it's changing you. Maybe it's time I changed. Maybe, but be careful you don't become someone you can't live with." We drank in silence for a while, watching ESPN on the bar's ancient television. Then Dave's phone rang. "Morrison," he answered, then listened for several minutes. His expression grew increasingly grim. "That was my investigator," he said after hanging up. "The one I hired to look into Sean's finances." "What did he find?" "Sean Brooks has been planning this for months. He's got offshore accounts, hidden assets, and a very expensive lawyer. He's not just having an affair with your wife, Nick. He's orchestrating something bigger." "Like what?" "Like making sure he comes out of both divorces with as much money as possible. He's been setting up Jennifer to take half your assets, then planning to divorce his own wife and claim poverty. It's elaborate and probably illegal, but it might work if no one's paying attention." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "How much does Jennifer know?" "Hard to say, but she's not as innocent as she's pretending to be. The affair wasn't just about love, Nick. It was about money. I finished my beer and stood up. I need to make some calls. Nick, whatever you're thinking, I'm thinking it's time to stop playing defense. I drove to Stephanie Brooks' house. She answered the door in a business suit, looking like she'd just come from a meeting. Mr. Harris, I was expecting you. You were? Sean came home this afternoon and packed a bag. He's staying at the Marriott downtown until things settle down. He also cleaned out our joint checking account. I'm sorry. Don't be. I've been planning my own exit strategy for years. Sean just gave me the excuse I needed. She invited me in and poured 2 glasses of wine. The family photos were gone from the mantelpiece, I noticed. The house felt different, less like a home and more like a museum. My lawyer thinks Sean's been planning this for months. I said, longer than that. Sean's been moving money around for over a year. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. I have copies of everything. Why didn't you confront him? Because I wanted to see how far he'd go, and because I wanted to make sure I had enough evidence to destroy him when the time came. Stephanie Brooks was not the grieving, betrayed wife I'd expected. She was a strategist, and she'd been playing a longer game than any of us realized. What do you need from me? I asked. Nothing, but I thought you should know what you're up against. Sean's not just trying to steal your wife, Mr. Harris. He's trying to steal your life. Then I guess I'll have to steal his first. She smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. I was hoping you'd say that. We spent the next 2 hours planning. Stephanie had financial records, email accounts, and 18 years of knowledge about Sean's business practices. I had technical skills, legal evidence, and a burning desire for justice. By the time I left her house, we had a plan that would expose Sean's financial manipulations, destroy his professional reputation, and leave him with nothing but legal bills and regret. One more thing, Stephanie said as I reached the door. Jennifer called Sean this afternoon. They're meeting tomorrow night at the Riverside Hotel, room 412. How do you know? Because I still have access to Sean's credit cards. He's not as smart as he thinks he is. I drove home, feeling like a hunter who just spotted his prey. Jennifer and Sean thought they were playing games with a naive husband who'd roll over and accept defeat. They were about to learn how wrong they were. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. We need to talk. Tomorrow night, it's important. I texted back. Where and when? Riverside Hotel, 8 p.m., lobby bar. I smiled. Jennifer was setting up what she thought would be a private conversation to negotiate terms. Instead, she was walking into a trap that would end both her affair and Sean's financial schemes. I poured myself a scotch and sat by the windows, looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow night, everything would change. Jennifer and Sean had started this war, but I was going to finish it. And when I was done, they'd both understand that destroying someone's life comes with consequences they never saw coming.